like to talk to you some today about the topic of judgment. Not a popular topic these days, but in the scriptures, judgment is a reflection of what God values. So in the Bible, God values life. So when a life is unlawfully taken, according to Genesis 9, civil government is to take the life of the murderer. God values property rights. So when theft occurs, there's judgment to be given, a penalty to be paid. And the law of God speaks of that. God values property. There's a passage in 1 Kings 13 that's a bit strange that I think can be understood well in light of this. It's set during the time of King Jeroboam. He was the king of the northern tribes right after the kingdom split following the death of King Solomon. And he was a wicked king. And he set up an altar against God's law because the only altar that where they were supposed to offer sacrifices was at the temple in Jerusalem, but he set up one elsewhere. And so God sent a prophet to him. And the prophet, he uttered a prophecy of judgment against that altar, said that the altar would be destroyed and that the ashes of it would be scattered. King Jeroboam liked that altar, and he didn't like that prophet, so he extended his hand and ordered that the prophet be seized. And when he extended his hand, it shriveled. God judged his hand because God valued the word of that prophet. And when that happened, the prophet prayed for him, and his hand was healed. After that, the king, Jeroboam, offered to host the prophet at his house and treat him to a feast and even give him a reward. The prophet said, "No, I can't do that because God told me that I'm to go home a different way and that I am not to eat anything before I return home." So he left Jeroboam. And there was a second prophet. This is where the story gets really strange. There was a second prophet who went after him. And the second prophet said, "Why don't you come home with me and eat with me?" And the first prophet said the same thing again. "No, I can't do that because God told me that I'm to go home another way and I'm not to stop and eat with anyone but go straight home." So the prophet number two said, "Well, God gave me another message and he told me now that it's okay for you to come home with me." But he was lying. And so prophet number one believed him and went home with him. And as they were eating, the second prophet, the one who had lied, said, "Well, now God has given me a true prophecy, and my true prophecy is that since you disobeyed God's command initially, you will be eaten by a lion when you leave here." And that's exactly what happened. God judged that first prophet. What in the world is going on with that? Well, I think, again, the principle is that God judges what he values. And the reason that word of the prophet number one, or the reason that the prophet number one was judged was because he failed to maintain the word of God as God commanded him. And therefore God brought judgment because God values truth. So I want to just ask you the question, do you value truth? That's a very important question these days because truth, I believe, has come upon some hard times lately. And I believe this is such an important area that this is actually the topic I'm going to be spending a lot of time on, focusing exclusively on in the upcoming men's retreat. And I hope you can join us for that as we explore this whole area of being, in the men's retreat, a man of truth during this needy time in the life of the church and in the life of our nation. So think about that and ask God to help you love the truth particularly of His Word.